It's Monday, June 17. In the headlines, Senate approves Natural Disaster Reserve Fund. In business news, Phosphate Company Limited to expand to North America. Regionally, Barbados' Prime Minister says Caribbean banking sector in need of diversity and competition. And in sports, Reggae Boys to begin Copa America tournament. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund, NNDRF, was given the nod by the Upper House of Parliament on Friday. The NNDRF policy promotes a risk-layered approach to funding disaster relief, recovery and reconstruction through the establishment of adequate reserves to address the costs associated with disasters. Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, piloted the amendment to the Financial Administration and Audit Act for the establishment of the fund.
It expressly provides that funds in the NNDRF, for example, can treat with disasters that severely affect the economy and that lead to economic loss of 1.5% or more of GDP. So it sets clear parameters which activate our ability to access the facility.
Senator Johnson-Smith says the NNDRF is to be funded with resources from the Consolidated Funds Principal Bank account.
Climate has changed, so we have to respond. We have to work on making our infrastructure more resilient, but also on making our economy more resilient so that we're able to respond to these and other challenges, because they will come. In addition to the direct impact on people, on individual lives, the social upheaval, damage and losses associated with these events destroy Jamaica's productive capacity and seriously damage our GDP, balance of payments, trade and fiscal position. So we have to respond. Generally, historically, our response has been to divert funding from one budgeted activity to disaster response. And this cannot continue. If we are focused on achieving our Agenda 2030 and indeed the SDGs, that type of financial management must be something of the past.
Disasters such as hurricanes, tropical storms and depressions and floods over the last 15 years have cost the government and the people of Jamaica more than $4 billion. That data is from the Caribbean Development Portal.
I mean, these costs will trend higher due to the effects of climate change, which has been and will continue to be this planet's most striking feature in recent and future generations. Hurricane, storm, flood, drought, they're all becoming more extreme, and we add to the mix rising sea levels because of our island state.
Studies have also shown that over the last 25 to 30 years, Jamaica has experienced an increase in the frequency of natural events, primarily floods related to inclement weather, tropical depressions, tropical storms, hurricanes, and droughts. Between 2001 and 2010, Jamaica had been impacted by 10 disaster events, resulting in billions of dollars in loss. There will be more non-stop flights between Lima, Peru and Montego Bay, Jamaica this year. This as LATAM, the largest airline in Latin America, is to begin operating these flights on December 1. The Ministry of Tourism says the flights will be operated 3 times per week, utilizing 2 planes with capacity for 144 and 174 seats. According to senior advisor and strategist in the Ministry of Tourism, Denana Seavright, the move will allow for more flights to other countries in South America. Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs Marlene Malahoo Ford has announced an upcoming public education campaign to inform Jamaicans about the Constitutional Reform Committee's recommendations. She made this announcement during her contribution to the sectoral debate in the House of Representatives last week.
We have hosted forums in schools, community centers, and places of worship, going straight to the people themselves. These open forums have served a second purpose, to inform and educate the people about the Constitution of Jamaica and the constitutional reform process itself. Now that the report has been completed, we will again hold public consultations and conduct a public education campaign about its content or recommendations, just as we had planned to do from the very beginning.
The minister also acknowledged concerns from many Jamaicans about the lack of public education on the constitutional reform agenda.
Madam Speaker, it is entirely unrealistic to expect that the committee by itself can close the knowledge gap that exists in the society on the matters relating to the Constitution or matters of governance. It is unrealistic to expect that we are going to meet with every single person, especially at a time when people are so distracted or attracted to other material, when the algorithms direct attention to the negative more than the positive, to what is hostile more than what is friendly, and then give those proponents of hostility a space and make them viral.
The recommended changes to Jamaica's constitution addressing issues like citizenship and the powers of Jamaica's future president were submitted to Parliament last month. National Water Commission NWC customers in Benin, Goshen and surrounding environs in St. Anne are without regular water supply because thieves stole electrical cables from the Egypt facility. The public is being encouraged to provide any information of the theft to the police that could lead to the arrest of the perpetrators. The areas impacted include Ingleside, Orange Hill, Benin, Goshen, Tansy Corner as well. Who is your father? That question could prove a significant one for legal matters. The Registrar General's Department explains why having a father's name on a birth certificate is important.
For children whose father's name is not on their birth certificate, what we find is that for legal purposes, persons want inheritance. Most times we need proof of paternity. And which other way would you show that John Brown is the father of this child if his name is not on the birth certificate? It makes it much more difficult when they are supposed to be probating the will.
So my name is not on my child's birth certificate. How could I add it?
Well, there are three means by which a father's name can be added to a child's birth record. One is that he signs at the time of the registration. So if the registration is done at the hospital today, he visits the hospital to sign within the window of the mother being there and signs. Now, if it's a case where the father is not available, or he's out of the island, or he's otherwise engaged, then the other means by which he can add his name is by what we call a Form E. Now, this document is signed by both parents in the presence of a Justice of the Peace, and they would have submitted their IDs along with the form once it is signed. This form, though, is valid for 42 days, and it's 42 days from the date of registration. After 42 days, the form is not valid.
But my child is already 1 year old. That time has well passed. What can I do?
The next means by which the name can be added is by what we call a status form. Now, this form is utilized once the child is over 6 weeks old. Once the child is over this time frame, what it means is that you'd have to complete the status form, have it signed in the presence of the Justice of the Peace, both parents would submit their IDs, and the father would have submitted his birth certificate. There's a cost attached to this service once a child is over 6 weeks.
I'm a full-blown adult. My father is 1 foot in the grave. can I still add him to my birth certificate?
There are no restrictions to what time frame you can add your name. If the child is 100 and the father is still alive, then of course he can send the status form in order to add his name to the child's birth record. If the father is deceased, then it makes it a little bit more complicated because he's not here to sign. He's not here to vouch to say that he's actually the father of this child. So with that, you'd have to go through the court, do the necessary documentations in terms of affidavit and all that in order to add the father's name to the child's birth record.
My situation is a bit different. My daughter now lives overseas, but it is something that I've always wanted to do. Is it still possible?
If the child is overseas, then it would not affect the processing of that application because the requisite documents really involves the parents. So once the mother is here in the island, she can sign, and if she's not in the island, then the form is on our website. It can be pulled down, printed, completed in the presence of a notary public, and then the original is sent to us or to the applicant who will be applying for the birth certificate. Now bear in mind that when you're adding the father's name to the child's birth record, is what we call a record updating activity. So if it's not the child or the mother who's coming to do this application, the application should accompany a permission letter.
RGD register my son wrong and give him another man's name. I need for them correct that. So how that I go?
Once it affects the child's identity in terms of who they really are, like a brown to a gray, that changes a little drastic. So of course, you know, you'd have to go to the court where DNA would have been ordered to prove the true paternity of the child, and then a court order is sent to the RGD to do the necessary changes.
Time now for the business report with Denise Williams.
Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Business Report. I'm Denise Williams, your guide through the latest happenings in the world of business. Lighting and PVC manufacturing outfit Fosrich Company Limited has secured real estate in the United States through which it will service that North American market. In a release on the Jamaica Stock Exchange website, the company said that its subsidiary Fosrich USA Incorporated has signed a lease agreement for an office in Tennessee and has outfitted the space. Additionally, the company has employed staff who will be engaged in data collection and market research efforts. The government of Jamaica, GOJ, and the World Bank on last Tuesday signed a loan agreement for US $20 million to support the Jamaica Social Protection for Increased Resilience and Opportunities SPIRO project, directly benefiting at least 290,425 people, including 155,719 women. The program will support formal workers covered by universal insurance, vulnerable job seekers, and beneficiaries of various social assistance programs. Additionally, the Minister of Labor and Social Security, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, and other government stakeholders will benefit from system upgrades and diagnostic studies. Jamaican-traded regional business technology company Productive Business Solutions PBX expects to close its strategic acquisition of Xerox operations in Ecuador and Peru by this month end, which is the end of the company's current second quarter of 2024. In its March first quarter shareholders report, management reports that it has successfully initiated the strategic acquisition. During trading for the period June 10, 2024 to June 14, 2024. The following companies represent the top 3 most active stocks that investors bought and sold on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Omni Industries Limited with 26,553,211 units amounted to 18.92% of the market volume in terms of sales. Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with 18,466,801 units amounting to 13.16% of the market volume in terms of sales. Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial with 14,882,699 units amounted to 10.60% of the market volume in terms of sales. Over on the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, trading on June 14, 2024, registered a volume of 41,009 shares crossing the floor of the exchange, valued at 775,444 Trinidad and Tobago dollars and 2 cents. JMMB Group Limited was the volume leader with 11,000 shares changing hands for a value of 13,568 Trinidad and Tobago dollars and 40 cents, followed by Prestige Holdings Limited with a volume of 9,059 shares being traded for 117,590 Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Moving from the money moves of investors, executives, and companies, we turn to the Forex market. On June 14, 2024, the Bank of Jamaica reported that US $48.8 million was bought from Forex traders, while US $55.5 million was sold to Forex traders. Buying directly from the Bank of Jamaica, foreign currency traders sold the US dollar for $156.49 and bought the US dollar for $155.14. The difference between the buy and sell rate was $1.35, which represents a profit for Forex traders for every US dollar traded. Canadian Forex traders earned a trading profit of $2.96 from transactions with the Bank of Jamaica. The Canadian dollar was sold at $116.02 and bought for $113.06. For traders looking at the British pound, they pocketed a profit of $2.22, selling it for $200.76 and buying it for $194.32. For the credit report tip of the day, building a solid credit relationship with your banker is essential for the growth and stability of your business. One of the effective strategies to nurture this crucial relationship is to open a business bank account. Establish your business's financial identity by opening a dedicated business bank account. This is the first step in creating a formal relationship with your bank. And with that, we wrap up today's business report. I'm Denise Williams. Appreciate your company. Stay well informed, stay ahead of the curve. Until our next update, take care.
In regional news, Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley suggests the banking sector in the Caribbean is in need of diversity and competition. She says these institutions, compared with countries like Canada, have been less than dynamic to Caribbean nationals. She believes regional countries need not look north for investments.
You go to the same banks in Canada and you open an account in 10 minutes. Because of the pressure put on Caribbean countries with the loss and threat of the loss of correspondent banking, it takes 2 to 3 months, even if you are an individual heading up organizations and for which the risk is seemingly much less. This is unacceptable. Our people cannot be financial lepers. When I was 16 years old, I walked into Royal Bank of Canada and I opened an account. Nobody asked me anything about a utility bill. Nobody asked me a whole host of questions. And while I understand the need for due diligence, I do know that it can be done far better with competition and that we can treat ourselves far better. We need to look within and across. And I believe that if we can find the appropriate instruments to mobilize capital and the savings of our people, and if we can find a way that makes it easy to understand what the possibilities for those investments can be, I believe that we can do far more to help ourselves even before we look to ask others to help us. I say so against the background that the reform of the global financial architecture is still critical.
Guyana's President, Dr. Irfan Ali, highlighted a surge in African delegations exploring regional economic potential in CARICOM countries during his address on the second day of the ongoing Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum in the Bahamas. Caris Gonzalez reports on the details.
During his keynote address at the 31st African Export-Import Bank, Afro-Exim annual meeting at the third edition of the Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum held in the Bahamas on Thursday, President Irfan Ali highlighted a substantial increase in African delegations exploring economic potential in the region, particularly in technology, since Afro-Exim came on board. He described this development as a success story, noting the significant progress made over the past 3 years and informed investors about the extensive market opportunities within the region.
You've seen in this region, since Afro-Exim came on board, more than 50 African delegations looking at business opportunities. And this region collectively can give your businesses access to more than 1 billion people because of the trade relationship and trade agreement that we have collectively as a region.
President Ali spoke to a positive narrative that should come from stakeholders, while also stressing the impact Afro-Exim will not only have on the region, but also in Africa and around the world.
That is why these forums are important, and it is important that every stakeholder turn out to show our collective support for what we are doing to change things.
Furthermore, a commitment was made to further collaborate with other CARICOM countries to maximize the advantages presented by the bank's initiatives.
We're going to continue to work on getting all the other outstanding members of the region to be a member of the Afro-Exim family.
During its 31st annual meetings in Nassau, Bahamas, the Afro-Exim officially exchanged a loan proposal with Guyana, totaling US $500 million. This proposal aims to facilitate the construction of a sovereign facility in Guyana, marking a significant step towards strengthening economic ties and development in the region. The annual meeting, which commenced on June 12 and concluded on June 14, was held under the theme Owning Your Destiny, Economic Prosperity on the Platform of Global Africa. I am Caris Gonzalez reporting for the HGP 90 News.
Antigua and Barbuda has established diplomatic relations with the State of Palestine 13 years after recognizing it as a state. Foreign Affairs Minister Honorable E.P. Chet Green signed the agreement in New York on Friday. Garfield Burford reports.
A highly significant diplomatic development unfolding in New York on Friday. Foreign Affairs Minister Honorable E.P. Chet Green, together with this country's top diplomat in Washington, D.C., Sir Ronald Sanders, fulfilling a commitment made earlier this year.
What we do today is to join with other nations, provide leadership to some, where the issue of the two-state solution is concerned. Antigua and Barbuda has over the years had relations with Israel. But we realize that a meaningful two-state solution cannot be with a relationship with one. It has to be recognition of both parties.
In 2011, Antigua and Barbuda recognized Palestine as a state. On Friday, the country went further, establishing formal diplomatic relations. Its significance was not lost on Palestine's ambassador with ministerial rank, Dr. Riyad Mansour.
We have 4 countries that during the course of the last month and a half, from the Caribbean nations that announced the recognition of the state of Palestine. And in fact, now all of the countries, the 14 of them from CARICOM, have recognized the state of Palestine. That was historic, that was important. It opened the door for the wave of recognitions that followed in Europe, led by Spain.
Both officials reaffirmed their country's adherence and commitment to the principles and purposes enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations and the provisions of international law, such as the promotion of international peace and security. It comes at a time when there is again raging global debate about the two-state solution as Israel pounds the Gaza Strip in retaliation for the attacks by Hamas in October last year. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have reportedly been killed, and there is a grave humanitarian crisis there. Sir Ronald Sanders writes in his syndicated column that the establishment of formal diplomatic relations underscores the influence small states can exert in the international arena, championing justice and equality. He also says, quote, leaders like Prime Minister Honorable Gaston Brown exemplify the courage needed to steer these critical decisions, demonstrating that small states can indeed play a significant role in addressing global issues, end quote. This agreement will be formally transmitted to the Secretary General of the United Nations.
In sports, we get the ball rolling with football. Jamaica's Reggae Boys will begin their journey in the Copa America tournament this week in the United States. The boys are set to face Mexico on June 22. The Jamaicans find themselves in Group B of the tournament alongside Mexico, Ecuador, and Venezuela. We now look to athletics. Jamaica will not be represented in the men's 4x400 meters at the upcoming Paris Olympics after failing in their bid to make it into the top 16 in the world on Sunday. According to the Jamaica Observer, the team of Raheem Hales, Javon Powell, Kimar Farquharson and Therese Roden, competing against Barbados' team and an international quartet, ran a courageous 2:59.75 at the NACAC New Life Invitational held in Nassau, Bahamas, but failed to run faster than the 2:59.12 seconds set by Zambia in March. Over now to cricket, as following the West Indies' nail-biting victory over New Zealand at the Brian Lara Cricket Academy, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, spoke on the team's World Cup chances at the last post-cabinet press briefing.
Speaking on the West Indies' narrow 13-run victory over New Zealand Wednesday night, at the post-cabinet media briefing, Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said that the Windies played magnificently and is confident about their World Cup winning chances.
Well, the West Indies' chances are as good as anybody else's as long as, and if we play according to the quality of our team on paper, other teams will have to respect us. Last night they gave us a bit of a scare, but in the end they played magnificently to win that match last night, because you don't win a match like that against a team like New Zealand that is desperate. New Zealand had to win last night, and they played very well. And in the end, the game turned out to be, quite a good game.
The Prime Minister also added that Afghanistan has been one of the tournament's surprise packages.
You know who's a big favorite in T20 now? Afghanistan. You wouldn't have thought so. But the game is growing by leaps and bounds, and we are hoping to be there. And as long as we play our best, we should be top-notch.
Adrian Lazar, TTT Sport.
And that's it for the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thank you so much for watching.